So I'm Michael DeVito Jr., and I was born in Borough Park and I was raised in the borough of Parks. Over 40 years ago, my dad moved us here to Staten Island, a union man with the opportunity to buy a home and to provide his family with a better future. For the last 13 years, I have been serving Staten Island's most vulnerable youth, helping them find a better future. I am currently in charge of workforce initiatives for New York Center for Interpersonal Development. It is a Staten Island nonprofit agency. I promise there'll never be a test on that. I, in fact, at times completely forget what it's called. We go by NICED. Some of you might know us. I'm also a mediator. I'm an English teacher, and I'm a proud member of the UFT.
All right.
Thank you. Effectively, the work that I do every day means that I bridge the gap between education and employment. And I absolutely love what I do, because I know that when I'm helping a kid, I'm helping an entire family. And doing so is as important to me as being a United States Marine. These titles that I have, they're etched on my heart and my soul. And they're not the only titles that I have. I have a few other really cool titles. I'm a dad to a strong-willed, independent young woman, our daughter Mia. And I'm a husband and a partner to the absolute smartest person that I know, and the love of my life, Natalie. So the Marine Corps taught me that to get a job done, you have to have initiative and you have to have dependability. And my drill instructors, they taught me endurance. And my service taught me to be selfless. And I have learned to be my best through the thick and thin of life. And I think that many of us here know that life can get terribly thick. Our family knows exactly what it is like to have life stomp you on the foot and punch you in the face at the exact same time. 5 years ago, Natalie fell suddenly sick. And every day, we face her illness as a family, and we face those challenges together, and we also navigate the maze of insurance claims. And if you've ever been a caregiver, you know that you can become a healthcare expert navigating those claims. And we feel fortunate to be covered. We truly do. And we're every day worried about what's going to happen to our care and the care of millions of other Americans, because our president has signed an executive order that jeopardizes all of that. And our GOP-led Congress is playing divisive games with our lives. All the while, we are paying the price every single day. And doesn't it get thin? Our daughter Mia has found a profession that she absolutely loves. She became a court stenographer. And it's pretty cool. And we are so proud of her. And every day we're concerned that it's getting harder and harder to make it in today's America. We taught Mia the power of hard work. We taught her the power of choice. She has got on a plan to pay back her school debt. And she's going to pay it back. And she expects that America is going to be there for her. We expect that. And yet what we're seeing is 1,800 families currently on strike. Local 3 families, union member families, fighting against corporate greed. And instead of being able to make the same contributions to the greater good of America, to have the same benefit and security that my dad had when he brought us here 40 some odd years ago, they are being bled dry of their resources and their spirits. So when you're asking me where I stand in all of this, and if you're asking me the reasons why I'm running for Congress, the reasons why I'm running are for those reasons. Because I believe in protecting my family. Because I believe in protecting people who are willing to work hard and contribute to America. You know, 25 years ago, yes sir.
Okay, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. 25 years ago, I joined the Marine Corps because there was nothing for me to do here. And I went away. And the young people that I serve every day are saying the exact same thing. There is nothing for them to do here. There are no jobs with living wages. There aren't places where they can afford to live. They need a car to get around. We deserve better. We have to work harder to provide for the opportunities for our island, our district, and our country. So I believe that we have to double down on the American workers. I believe that we have to invest in technologies that keeps our bills paid, that keeps our businesses thriving. I believe that we need to double down on transportation and infrastructure and to create a resiliency plan that doesn't leave us underwater. So I'm running for Congress because I believe in the promise of the American dream. Because I believe in each and every one of you here. And with the same passion that has gotten me up every day to help just one kid succeed, I am running for Congress with that passion, with that energy, and I'm running for you. Thank you.
A minute between the good idea.
So before I start, I just want to acknowledge someone in the room. And that's Richard Reichart. You know, you ran last year at a time when eyes weren't on this election. The Democratic Party had given up on this seat. You put yourself out there and you fought for the ideals that we all care about. And I want to give you a round of applause for that. My name is Max Rose, and I am here for a very simple reason. I'm here because it's damn time we took back this seat, and it's damn time we flipped the House and checked this administration. That is why I'm here. You know, I have been a politician for 115 days. Who's counting, right? But I've been a soldier for nearly 8 years. The greatest privilege of my life was leading soldiers in combat in Afghanistan as an infantry platoon leader. I earned a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for my service, and I continue as a captain in the National Guard today. It was the men and women who I served with who showed me the true potential of this country. Soldiers like Staff Sergeant Richard McNall, who hit an IED in Iraq, nearly severed his leg. He rejects full-time disability so he can deploy again. Donovan, Grimm, Donald Trump do not hold a candle to soldiers like Staff Sergeant Richard McNall. They can't match the commitment of the people who wake up every day on Staten Island and South Brooklyn and work their heart out. The cops, the firemen, the teachers. We're not seeing enough out of DC. You know, Donald Trump horrified me on the campaign trail. But I'm even more horrified by the things him and his Republican colleagues have done since then. Let's just go through their greatest hits. All right? The Attorney General perjures himself about as many times as they try to take away health care from millions of people. I think it's about time that he resign. What do you think about that? This tax code, this tax cut, whatever you want to call it, is destroying the middle class in this country. They're letting corporations pollute our airs and pollute our waters in an absolutely unprecedented manner, and it's got to stop. You know, we don't see enough courage to lead out of Washington, D.C. These Republicans, they're not new. And Democrats, we have not been Democrats in a long time. We've got to start being Democrats again. We've got to start thinking big again. Because I don't want to see politicians with the courage to stand up to corporations. Corporations like Mylan, who jacked the price of an EpiPen by 400%. It's going to be insulin next. It's going to be an asthma inhaler next. I want to see politicians that stand up for a fair tax code, because there's cops and there's firemen and there's teachers going home tonight in this district having to live with the fact that a hedge fund manager pays a lower tax rate than they do. That's got to stop. And I believe in a real infrastructure plan in this country. One that puts people back to work and trains them with apprenticeships in a real unprecedented way in this country. We've got to start fighting for the people back home like we never have before, and that's what I've done my whole life. You know, previous to becoming the modern day version of a starving gospel preacher, I was the chief of staff for Brightpoint Health, a network of outpatient clinics for the poor and the homeless throughout New York City. And right here on Staten Island, we stood up the first 24/7 substance abuse facility for anyone in the state. A recovery center opened up in coordination with Community Health Action Network of Staten Island. Brightpoint started as a nursing home for HIV and AIDS patients. And what we need for the opioid epidemic today is that same level of resources and commitment that we allocated at the height of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. We need those types of real investments. Now, previous to Brightpoint, I was a special assistant to Brooklyn's first African-American district attorney, the late, great Ken Thompson. And I helped stand up for Ken some of his social justice initiatives, specifically Begin Again, a program to erase low-level warrants in New York City that were tied to summonses, many of which were concentrated in minority communities. And when Ken stood up this program, they said, Ken, they are going to Willie Horton you. They're going to call you weak on crime. And Ken said, no, I have the courage to do this. Guess what? The cameras lined up, the people lined up, and now that program is being replicated throughout New York City and throughout the country. And that's why it is my honor that I am proposing for federal funding for programs like Begin Again, programs like conviction review units, programs like immigrant fraud units, programs like cold case units in every county in America, because we need criminal justice reform on a scale that we have never seen. You know, these are big problems. But when my vehicle hit an IED in Afghanistan, and I was medevaced, a 2-star general came up to me and he looked down at me and he said, son, 5 years ago you'd be dead, and then he walked away. That's how generals comfort you. But you know what, he was right. Because it was only due to the armor underneath my vehicle that pushed the explosion away that my life was saved and the life of Matt Smith was saved. The life of the 4 other soldiers in my vehicle were saved who were not medevaced. But the only reason why I had that armor was because Congress finally got their act together. And they said, I don't care about party affiliation, I care about saving soldiers' lives. That's the story of America at its best. We don't run away from challenges, we run to them. I'm a living testament to that. So do not tell me that I have got to keep staying on the Staten Island Expressway for hours on end. All right? Do not tell me I have to wait for the R train. We need a $1 trillion infrastructure plan in this country. All right. We need universal health care in this country that covers every man, woman, and child. Do not tell me we can't accomplish that. We just need politicians with the courage to lead. And more importantly than that, we need all of you. We're going to bring change to Washington. And with that, thank you so much for your time. And I think I've finished. There's 45 seconds to go. Another minute? No, we're good.
Okay.
Okay, so
I just want to say, let's not get into personal questions or personal attacks, all right? So we want to keep this as professional and as useful as possible. The handsome gentleman with his hand up in the back. Do you need the mic or no?
No, I have a big mouth.
Okay. Use it.
Okay, both candidates, who did you support in the presidential primary, and what do you think of your candidate now?
What do you think of the candidate now?
Now, the person you supported in the last presidential primary, what do you think of your candidate now?
Democratic primary.
Bernie Sanders supporter.
I guess the first
Bernie, Hillary, or Jill Stein, or whoever?
So I started off feeling the burn. And continue to. And I believe that the way that shook out was wrong. And I applaud Bernie Sanders for continuing to raise his flag and to fight for us.
Yes.
Awesome.
Now, I felt stuck between a rock and a hard place in the primaries. I know many of you did. But I did support Hillary Clinton. And well, Hillary doesn't get a round of applause too, huh? And listen, yeah. What we saw in the presidential election was exactly where the Democratic Party has gone wrong. I said in my speech that we as Democrats have got to go back to being Democrats again. And that means, and I'll tell you what that means. I'll tell you what that means. That means not supporting things like the carrying interest loophole, which lets hedge fund managers pay a lower tax rate than cops and firemen. That means firmly standing behind the fact that we support unions in this country, in both the private sector and the public sector, because when union wages rise, everyone else's wages
The
rise.
question was, and what do you think of your candidate now?
But Hillary Clinton's a citizen.
Okay.
And
Your opinion, please?
my opinion is that she should be proud of her service, and it's time that we move on and reframe the identity of our party.
Joanne, and then John will go behind.
Okay,
Phil, I see you. I got you.
my question is, right now, decades after Roe v. Wade, the right of women to make their own medical decisions is under attack, and with the staling of the Supreme Court seat that should have gone to the nominee of the last legitimately elected president, we are in dire danger of women losing all of their rights as human beings, as citizens. Where do you stand on a woman's right to choose to make her own medical decisions?
You guys can hear me, right? So I cannot believe that question still has to be asked in this country. It's astounding. Nobody asks me anymore, what do you think about minorities' right to vote? No one asks me that. Well, and you're right. But the point is that we've got to get to a place in this country where a woman never has to fear the rights of her over her own body. Never again. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when my mother was living in the Lower East Side as a little girl, every other Sunday, as she tells me, someone would come into their house, close the door to the second room, and scared women would walk in and out of the apartment throughout the day. We can't ever go back to that country. Ever again. Over my dead body. Over my dead body.
Is this still on?
Yes, go on.
So this is a really simple question to answer. Absolute, complete sovereignty over their own bodies.
Thank you. John, and then Phil and Cindy.
It's for both the candidates. I'd like to know how much money they have raised thus far and how much money they think they need to run a successful campaign and win this election.
So we reported around $20,000 in this last cycle, and we are actively raising money. This is a grassroots campaign, and we believe that we need $150,000 to $200,000 to win the primary.
We raised $320,000 in 60 days. We outraised Dan Donovan by $100,000. And since then, we've kept on the same pace. But listen, we have got to get to a place in this country where money doesn't matter anymore in politics. This is disgusting that you show your viability as a candidate by how much money you've raised. We got to get to a place in this country where you show your viability by what you believe in and who your support is at the local level and how much energy and passion you have. It's disgusting, and it perpetuates corporations controlling our politics. And it's got to stop.
Believe Cindy or Phil? Rock, paper, scissors. Phil, I think you had your hand up. Okay, thank you. Cindy?
My name is Cindy Forsby, and my question is, where do you both stand on admitting more refugees into the country for situations like Syria or other humanitarian disasters, either man-made or natural disasters?
Ma'am, could you, I think what you said is where do we stand on letting more refugees
That's correct.
into this country, correct?
Yes.
So, we have got to position this in terms of this administration's larger effort to cut off this country to the very people who built it. Because they are restricting refugees, they are restricting legal immigrants, they are kicking people out of this country, ripping people from their homes, and it is absolutely disgusting. You know, when I deployed to Afghanistan, even when I got hurt, I woke up in the arms of my interpreter, who now lives in Memphis. He was only able to come here because of our country's sensible, humane policies. Those need to continue. If he was still in Afghanistan, he might be dead. I mean, this is shocking. We are dealing with life and death issues here, but this is just not humanitarianism. Within 5 years, the vast majority of refugees in this country become actively, economically producing agents throughout this country. The Syrian population is a great example of that. Just look at what the Syrian community in Bay Ridge, throughout South Brooklyn, and right here on Staten Island. This is our country. There's no difference between refugees and people like my great-grandmother who came here from Eastern Europe and became one of the early female principals in this country. There's no difference. We've got to put our foot down because that's not weak, letting refugees into this country. It is strong and it is smart.
So, with all honesty, your question directly I have not given thought to. So, what I will say is that we as a country of immigrants cannot turn our backs on people who want to come here and work to have the same prosperity as those that have come before them. If there's a number, I'm not sure what that number is. I do believe that it begins and ends with being as compassionate as America can possibly be. And we do that by lifting up our diversity.
Phil Maris.
Yes, this question is directed to both candidates. Both candidates drew attention to income and wealth inequality, and where DeVito called for federal investment for technologies to pay the bills. Max Rose called for federal funding for various programs, and in particular, an $11 trillion infrastructure plan. $1 trillion. My question is, what are your respective plans to fund these programs and raise the fund that's necessary for the various programs that Mr. Rose proposed as a solution to income and wealth inequality? Thank you.
Thank you. So, in 2009, during the height of a crisis, we invested in our country. So the idea that we cannot do that again, or at any time that we choose, is, to me, it just is unacceptable. So where does that money come from? It comes from the intentionally looking at where we need to place programs that allow us to develop workforces that allow economic development to occur. I look at economic development as workforce development, meaning to say that if we're training workforces, we're creating economic development. Okay? So that's going to take all of us coming together and not playing games that divide us, but focusing on the mission, which is to ensure that we survive. Because right now we're crumbling, right? Our roads are crumbling. Our bridges are crumbling. We have a D rating. We have a chance to turn that around. And it's just going to take coming together and investing in each other.
So, Phil, your question is spot on, because it is easy to walk in front of a room like this and say, hi, infrastructure, healthcare, bye. But if you can't pay for it, if you can't figure it out, then it doesn't mean anything. So here's what I'm proposing. When I talk about things like $1 trillion or $750 billion, something to that effect. The first is, as I've proposed, is increasing the capital gains rate for the ultra-wealthy in this country. Right now, we have millionaires and billionaires, whether they're hedge fund managers, private equity executives, real estate magnates, or if they're just sitting at home, paying a lower tax rate than all of us. That's the first thing, okay? The second thing is that we have got to look at the $5 trillion that is held overseas by corporations who are only focused on their greed. We've got to repatriate that money here at home. Now that's going to take a little bit of compromise though. We got to talk about potentially a 15% tax rate on that. But when you're talking about $5 trillion at 15%, that's $750 billion on top of that. Okay? Then we have got to remember that there was a time in this country when we made smart investments. There was a time when we invested in things like the National Institute of Health, infrastructure spending, roads, bridges, broadband technology, smart grid technology, and that produces economic growth. Not tax cuts for the rich, the joke of trickle-down economics.
Yes, it is.
Okay? So, if we have an additional infrastructure-focused bond sale, you will see us recoup that investment in terms of increased economic growth. With those things right there, and then, lastly, we have got to eliminate the incredibly horrendous corporate tax code that we have that is riddled with loopholes. When you see some corporations paying right now is an effective tax rate of 0, and it kills, or less, and it kills those small businesses in this country that are just trying to make it. Those are the ones paying 35%. So I'm okay with slightly lowering the corporate tax rate, as both parties have proposed, but only if you eliminate these loopholes. Only if you eliminate them, because then you're going to see overall economic growth, you're going to see an overall tax revenue increase, and you will be able to pay for this infrastructure plan. And this infrastructure plan is going to include apprenticeships, which are going to push skilled labor into the private sector. There's 5 million jobs today that cannot be filled in this country. 5 million! It's about time that we stop thinking laissez-faire economics is going to solve that. And we start training people like we never have before.
Reese, Steve, you had your hand up earlier?
No.
Okay. So Reese, Rich, and Stephanie, and then we'll go. Okay.
My question is for both of you. It's not news that Staten Island is divided. This country is divided. Communities of color are not receiving funding and are not being taken seriously as viable communities in this country. Specifically on Staten Island, it's a huge issue. What do you guys plan to do, specific, tangible solutions to help empower communities of color?
So, there's a big difference between equality and equity, right? And in the work that I do every day, helping young people get reconnected to their education, I see this all the time. I see young people who are coming to us that aren't prepared, and they are behind, and they need our help. So, very specifically, I believe that we need to ensure that we do have equity, that we work with our most vulnerable communities to make sure that they have all of the resources that they need to ensure that we are able to, with intentionality, help them catch up. We very recently were faced with some budget cuts in some of our programs. And what we learned was one of the reasons why our at-risk programs were being cut was because they were spending more money on charter schools. So they were expecting us, as we're building our home with a certain number of bricks, to give away some bricks in order to allow the charter schools to build their homes, when we already didn't have enough bricks to build our home. That has to stop. We have to ensure that we double down on our public education system, and that we create that equity across the board.
So thank you for this question. Let's talk about what's happening right now. 1 in 9 African American men in this country are in prison. 1 in 3, roughly, will spend time at one point or another in their lives in the criminal justice system. And once they enter that prison's doors, we're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on them a year. We are doing the same thing in our criminal justice system that we do in our health system, which is that we overspend due to our abject inability to invest in prevention, to invest in communities. And I'm sick and tired of it. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to go on the defense. Right? We have got to look at these federal mandatory minimums, especially for nonviolent offenses. And there's an emerging bipartisan consensus around that. But your question was in regards to investments. And I wish I had just one answer for you. But there isn't one answer. We've got to invest in vocational education. We have got to lower education loans so anybody who wants to get an education in this country, no matter how high, can accomplish it. And then we have got to look at mending these deep divisions. I spoke earlier about federal funding to restore trust in the criminal justice system. But you failed to mention what our elected officials have done in the past right here on this island. When Dan Donovan is not speaking to this issue, Michael Grimm is not speaking to this issue. What they do speak to is the myth and the notion of the welfare queen.
Yes.
They perpetuate this idea that there's people in the bottom in communities throughout this city, throughout America, who are just producing waste. We need to invest again. We've got to rid ourselves of that notion. Thank you.
These guys are on fire. Rich, Victoria, Stephanie, and Victoria.
Could be a one-word answer.
Rich, brother, you gotta speak louder than that. You want a mic?
No.
So.
Yeah, it's for both of you. It conceivably could be a one-word answer, but I hope you expand on it. Have any of you yet, or are you planning to float out any of these messages in focus groups that include people from the other side? Because we're not going to win around here with just Democrats.
So, we'll do what it takes to win, but I just want to push back a little bit on that. All right? This notion that we need to become Republicans in name only to win this seat, or excuse me, Democrats in name only to win this seat. All right? We have just as many elected Democrats as elected Republicans in this district. But we've got to build trust again. What we can't do, though, is not be out there in the streets, but instead go to our pollster 60 days before an election and say, tell me what the people think. And then slice and dice it to try to triangulate our way to victory. If you have to do a poll to figure out what the people need, you are not fit to run for office.
So that's a really great question, Rich, right? And not one that you would think, I know why you'd ask it, Rich. It was something that you stood firmly on. And we all know how divided we are. And I also think that we know that we're in the fight of our lives right now. And there are going to be some people on the other side that do not care what we have to say. They are not going to vote for us. They are not going to agree with us. I believe that the way this election is won is that all of us come together and we stand together and we organize and we beat them. Because a long-term conversation is not going to be the way that this plays out.
Said Cynthia. Stephanie, I'm sorry.
Actually,
Well, my question was going to be similar to Phil's about, what's the best strategy in this, supposedly Republican borough. But since you just addressed that question, I wanted to ask a specific question for Mr. DeVito. Can you just clarify, you said that you work as a teacher and that you also direct the workforce initiatives or whatever, so how do you do all this? Is this like part-time, or how do you do all that stuff?
I'm very fast. Yes. So, in 2012, I became an English teacher. And it was something that I was planning to do for quite some time. And in 2005, when I came back from Okinawa to live back in America and in Staten Island, I was fortunate enough to start working for NYSID. And while I was working to get that degree and to get my certification, it was during those years that I absolutely fell in love with what I was doing. There was something about being a primary person. There was something about talking to young people and meeting them where they were, and to truly help them figure out how to live a better life. So when I got that certification, and it came time to go out and get a job, I ultimately never pursued it. So I owned the certification. I worked really hard for that English certification, and for my membership in the UFT, and I am still the Senior Director of Workforce Initiatives. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you have something for Max? Did you have a question for Max?
No.
You're from Bay Ridge.
I'm from Brooklyn, yeah.
Yeah, you're from the Brooklyns. Well, thank you for making me try. We're all in it together. Victoria, please.
Yes. So my question is related to external policy. So far none of you mentioned anything in terms of international policy, external affairs. So in particular, both of you having Army experience, and in particular Max Rose being very proud being part of a war, which I find very questionable, but that's perhaps my opinion, personal opinion. So my question is, how are you going to vote when you go, if one of you gets into the Congress, how are you going to vote on legislation when it will come perhaps to have this country set again to war? Are you going to vote yes, no? Are you going to vote for more money to the Army? So what's your position on the Army and external affairs, especially invading other countries and intervening in the affairs of other countries?
So there is a lot packed in that question, and I'm going to do my best to answer. And if I don't give you specifics enough, please call me out on it, and I will give you the specifics to the best of my ability. So here's what I know from going to war. If you care about our national security, then the last thing you should ever do is cut our State Department by 30%, as this administration has done. The last thing you should ever do is cut development programs, cut aid. That's what prevents war. Because you know what I've seen? The horror of war. It's not something I'm proud of. I'm not out here thumping my chest. But when someone has seen those horrors of war, believe me, I'm going to question. Anytime someone tells me it's a good idea to send our men and women back there again. Now let's look though at the Middle East, okay? Because you look at Libya, right? We bombed Libya and we didn't invade. And it's a mess there right now. Syria, we didn't bomb, we didn't invade, it's a mess. Afghanistan, we bombed, we invaded, and we stayed. And I've been there, it's a mess. Okay? Iraq, we bombed, we invaded, and we left. And then we went back, and it's still a mess. Okay? So this is complicated. But what I do know is that we retreat to our borders. And we say that the rest of the world can be on its own, I am not going to engage, then war will find us, no matter how much we avoid it. We've got to stay on the offensive, but we can do so in a holistic manner that doesn't mean killing people. This has been a problem on both sides of the aisle. President Obama, his administration, killed more people with drone attacks than any administration before that combined. And this has been something that both parties have done. Yes, and civilians, if you look at what the New York Times just said. So this is complex. Anybody who tells you this is simplistic, anybody that gives you absolute ultimatums, and declaratives, doesn't understand what's going on, and will ultimately produce a world that's less safe for you.
Right. Right.
So I would love to take the president to a little island 225 miles off of the mainland of Japan called Okinawa. It's where my child was born. It's where I spent 11 years of my life serving in the Marine Corps, and then afterward being there for Mia during her formative years. Within striking distance of North Korea. We have to be more diplomatic. We have to stop nation building. We have to ensure that we create the kinds of relationships that makes this entire world a safer place. And to not play atomic cat and mouse games.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm Nicholas, but it's fine.
Nicholas.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Nicholas. Fort Richmond Senior, and in March I'm going to become a proud registered Democrat.
Well, all right.
One of the candidates in this room will be my first vote, and I'm going to hold you to that. Right in the Democratic primary.
Somebody sign him up before he leaves. We need him.
One, I'm going to ask a question to both of you. I already talked about this with you, Mr. Rose, but I would like to elaborate. Congressman Donovan was at my school Sunday, and I questioned him, because he voted to put $800 billion more in defense spending. You guys know that we are spending more than 10 other countries combined in military defense funding, and it's doing us no good in my opinion. Would you be in favor of reallocating that money to put free college education for all? Finally, to get that I'm going to college next year, I'm worried about this. Student debt is $1 trillion. So that's my first question. Would you be in favor of free college education for all? My second question is, the Affordable Care Act is good, but it's not going far enough. Would you be in favor of Medicare for all?
So yes and yes. Right? As someone who has served a lot of young people who have struggled to even attempt to apply to college, that they couldn't even afford the application fees to get there, I believe that it is vitally important that we find a system, and if we find it in a defense budget, that is all right with me. The second thing is that we have to immediately identify that we need to start working that our destination is a universal health care plan. That it is going to take time to get there, and we need to start moving forward now. Yes?
So let's start with your first question. It was college for all, correct? So let me tell you what I believe in. I believe in education for all. Because we have got to dispel ourselves of this notion that vocational education in this country is not a viable pathway. We've got to dispel ourselves of that. All right? You can have an upper middle class job in this country with vocational education. But if we also start thinking that education ends at 22 in this country, that completely ignores the realities of the 21st century. So we've got to over-invest in retraining because the jobs of the future, we can't even predict them. You're in high school, right? You're going to have 5 or 6 different jobs that I have no idea. You're going to be designing flying cars for Uber that are going to be driverless. It's going to be unbelievable. Okay? But if we just rely on training someone until they're 18, it is a failure. Now listen, people say, we don't have the money for this. We don't have the money for this, right? At the height of the financial crisis, when banks brought us to the precipice, the federal government loaned them money at below 1%. And what they said to them is they said, you're so important to us, we have to make sure you survive. Today, the federal government does education loans at 8%, and it makes a profit. The left hand's not talking to the right hand, and it is stupid policy. So we have got to bring those education loans all the way down. So if someone wants to do the right thing in this country and lift themselves up and lift their family up, the country is there for them to give them a helping hand. Now, your second question was about healthcare for all. Very simply, I believe in universal health care in this country. That it should be a right, not a privilege. Now, but we cannot stop there though. If someone walks into a room and says, hey, Medicare for all buy, single payer buy, they're not expressing the true complexity of this system. In 2009 and before, New York State had a Medicaid system that was single payer. And it was the most wasteful thing that we have ever seen. And you know what they did in New York State? Introduced nonprofit health insurance companies, and it lowered overall costs, quality outcomes went up, per capita costs went down, and nobody wants to go back to single payer. So, here's what I'm proposing. One, there should never be something like a private health insurance company in this country ever again. They should all be nonprofit.
Okay.
Number two, Medicare age should be brought down to 50, albeit slowly, or incrementally. Number three, we have got to transition to a true value-based system, where finally, hospital systems and healthcare systems are paid for outputs, not inputs, so when they mess up your first knee surgery, they don't get paid again to have to do the second. And we have got to invest in prevention, primary care, housing, economic development, all the things that will improve someone's long-term healthcare outcomes. Okay? And then lastly, we need a public option. So no one ever has to live in a place in this country where they have just one health insurance option. Never again. So that's a real plan to get to universal health care in this country, but it is not going to be easy. And don't let any politician ever tell you that it's going to be or that it's simple.
I have a question. I'm actually going to piggyback off a little bit on what you said. It's regarding the Obamacare, and it's also regarding Medicare, Medicaid. Okay, and I deal with insurance, so that's why I'm asking this question. Okay, Medicaid actually pays out more to providers than any other insurance company. Okay. So why is it, for example, going to a primary doctor where some insurances will pay $50, $100, just hypothetical, and Medicaid will actually double that, okay? So and I'm going to use the Staten Island mental health, for example, okay? They, at one point, were taking insurances, and now they're turning around, I think they're taking it back now, but at one point, they only wanted to take Medicaid and Blue Cross and Blue Shield, because they were getting more money from those insurances. But I believe now that they're part of Rumsey, they're starting to take the insurances again, okay? How are you going to, I guess, curtail or whatever, that where some insurances pay less, and some are paying more to the providers, and I'm also going to speak for GHI, because GHI, for providers, haven't gotten a raise in over 15 years. So there's a dispersity in the insurance, and also I'm going to speak about Obamacare. Obamacare was meant to be affordable. And I will tell you that people that do have Obamacare, it's not affordable as it's meant to be for people that are working class or people that can afford it, okay? What are you as candidates, both of you, are going to do to help people that are poor, working class, and to be honest with you, there really isn't no middle class. Either you're poor or you're rich, because not the middle class is struggling or the working class is struggling. So what are you going to do to help everybody? Thank you.
So, when I first announced my run, I was thinking about this. Some people who call themselves political experts said, well, you're not going to have to talk policy until 90 days before the election. They live in Staten Island. So, a few things. Let's start at the end of your questions about Obamacare. Our first day that I announced my campaign, I said Obamacare is broken. Our first day. And I got calls, you shouldn't say that, you shouldn't say that. Well, it is. If you say you have health insurance, but it costs you $500 to go to the doctor, well, you don't have health insurance, you got, well, in case I get hit by a bus policy. Okay? So I talked about the value of prevention. Well, guess what? Medicare, the federal government sets the direction for healthcare policy. We need to double down on that. We need to negotiate with pharmaceutical companies, so companies no longer are giving people the choice of either going bankrupt or getting the drugs they need. We can move even beyond drug prices to start to negotiate the value of healthcare services on a regional level. You go one place, you need surgery, it's $80,000. You go to another place, it's $10,000. It makes no sense. And part of the problem is that we're not paying for outputs, we're paying for inputs. And the health insurance companies are making off like bandits. But you know what this administration is doing? This administration is cutting all that. They're going back to the 90s, to the 80s, when we had a fee-for-service system that made people rich and robbed Americans just trying to stay healthy. It's got to end. Okay, so in some places, you're right, Medicaid pays more, in some cases it pays less, in some cases it's Medicare, but the unifying thing throughout this is that health insurance companies and hospital systems aren't paid to keep you healthy. They're paid to fill hospital beds. It makes zero sense. We've got to start sending people to Washington, D.C. who understand this. Then we can start to fix it. It's going to take some time, though.
I know that, I'm sorry, what's your name? Yes. Sadat. Okay. So Sadat, Mike. Mike.
Were we, was that a follow-up, or were you asking both of us?
I was asking both of you.
Oh,
okay.
so,
Right.
Yes, thank you, sorry.
So, my wife goes to get hydration every 2 weeks. And we get bills, and sometimes the hydration is $496, and sometimes the hydration is 25 cents. And we've always tried to figure out why that is, right? We haven't found the answer, because it's really complicated. What I do know is that every year, when I get that letter in the mail that tells me what my health insurance premium is going to be, it's increased. So yes, indeed, the current system that we have is not working for us. And as I said earlier, our destination has to be a universal plan, and it's going to take us time to get there.
Thank you. So that, right? All right.
So I'll try to be loud. A lot of things I feel are very common on both sides of the aisle, like among citizens. There's a lot of concerns that I do think that we both share about, like, corporations especially having control of our government, or having the ear of our government to the detriment of kind of everyone. And I feel like it's been decades that this has been allowed, that these corporations have gotten larger and larger, banks, communication, even retailers have gotten larger, so that little by little, we haven't realized it, but we've been losing our choices. And as we've been losing our choices, we've been losing some of our rights as well, because we can't just say, oh, I am not happy with my cable provider, so I'm going to go to another cable provider, because, well, but do I have another cable provider? They're charging the exact same thing, and they're doing the exact same thing because they have an agreement with each other that they're not going to competition. There is no real competition, and I feel like we're at a state where corporations are kind of setting us up, or writing our legislation. How exactly can we address that? How exactly can we wrest control from them? Because they're not going to, like, right now, this is in Congress, because people that pay these individuals, the corporations that are paying, that are giving money for funds and for their fundraising, are telling them to push this tax thing through, even if it's unpopular.
Fantastic question.
So, it's pretty clear that at this point in our country, corporations are valued over our children, over our seniors, and over even our veterans. The only way that we're going to do anything about that is to create new regulations, to pull back the reins, and to get us back to a place where we have the protections that we had under the Stiegel glass. How does that happen? I believe that it happens by electing people who are everyday people, who are regular people, who will go down to Washington and to fight for what we need to protect ourselves. And that might sound like a really naive answer.
No.
The reality is that a guy like me never thought that he would ever run for office. And looking around and seeing how everything is not working for us, it made me move the ladder off of the wall that I was climbing and say that I need to pay attention to this. I have to do something to help us all. So what that means is that we need a lot of people like me who are going to go down and fight for everyday people.
Nice job.
You hit the nail on the head. We don't have a free market anymore in this economy. The Republican Party likes to say, I'm the party of the free market. No, you know what they're the party of? They're the party of the big businesses. Giveaways. They pay an effective tax rate of 0, and every time that your cable bill goes up, and that's a tax on you. It's no different. It is less money in your pocket. And we have to do a few things about it. The first thing we have to do is we have got to win in 2020 and put a Democrat in office who can run a Justice Department that runs a real antitrust division. Some of these companies have got to get broken up. Some of them really do. And it's not just in cable, right? It's also some of these companies out on the West Coast, okay? Now, I'm not advocating for any specific company today, but we have got to take a real hard look at this. Because it's not just the prices for consumers. It is so hard today for a small business. So hard for a small business to get a loan. It is so hard for a small business to market a new product. A real economy, a real free market, is one where there's competition. There's no competition anymore. Absolutely none. We've got to fix that. So thank you for bringing it up.
So we're going to allow any more questions. I have a question. Two? Yeah, we have club business as well. One of the B's. So if you asked a question before, let's just allow for anyone that hasn't. Cindy and Vicky are like, no. So all right, so Vicky and Cindy will be the last from the audience, and Dennis has got one, and I've got one as well. So ladies first. Cindy.
So, I'll try to make this history of Staten Island congressional politics fairly short and quick.
Yeah, short and direct.
But I've been witnessing. Okay, John Markey. I'm sorry. Let me scratch that. John Murphy was a Democrat, a very conservative Democrat. He lost the seat for us because he got caught up in app scam at the beginning of the 1980s. The Democrats did not get that seat back till Mike McMahon won. And so, and he only held it for one term. And then we lost it again. And so this is a really, really hard seat to win. I've seen very talented, very passionate people run. Some people ran very good campaigns and they maybe got 4 or 5 points closer, but nobody came, within a big margin of votes. Like, at least 10 or 12%. I mean, I'm going back from memory, so you can look up the facts, but the general story is correct. So how are you going to overcome these odds? Both of you.
So, I've had the privilege of helping more than 2,000 young people on this island get to a high school diploma. And that work was never about being a Democrat or Republican. That work was about helping people. And I believe that, and we're seeing with our volunteer coordination, that there are a lot of people out there that believe in me. And I believe in me too. So I believe that with the right person, with the right individual and the right effort, that we get this done. This is an incredibly divisive time in our country. And yes, Staten Island, you could say, is a lot like an example of the rest of the whole country itself. And I believe that you guys are all here tonight because you want to see change. Which means that if we do this together, you guys going out and finding people to get behind me, then we get this done.
So, I think the first thing is the 19 people we have running for Congress right now as Democrats. The day after the election, and I pledge this to you, each of us are going to work our heart out to help the nominee. We're going to absolutely work our heart out. You know, let's talk about it. Let's be honest. Why Democrats have not won this seat in the past?
Be honest.
It's because we deal with a real trust issue. People don't trust the Democratic Party like they once did when it comes to sending Democrats down to D.C. And beyond that, they don't think that government can accomplish anything anymore. They can't imagine a new Apollo project for battery technology. They can't imagine a 21st century Interstate Highway Act. They can't even fathom it. We have got to reignite people's belief in this country. And once we do, once we can start to reestablish trust in the Democratic Party, we're not going to win by a small margin. You know, people are galvanized today in a way that they haven't been in a long time. They are galvanized because of Donald Trump, but I also believe that they are galvanized because they're sick and tired of a Washington, D.C. that can't get anything done anymore. And so we have got to work on our operations, and we have got to win those communities who, God bless them, sometimes they vote for Obama, sometimes they vote for Trump, and in 2018 they're going to vote for a Democrat. And then lastly, this is going to be the first election in this district where young people are going to turn out in ways we have never even seen. And I'm relying on you for that, all right?
I believe that. Victoria.
So my question is a follow-up to Max Rose based on the question that Nicholas addressed. I think the question about the college being for free is very direct, and you didn't answer to that question. You turned it around about education, which is great, but once again, college for free or not? Do you support this or you do not support? Because people who want to go to college, they want to go for free. So are you going to do any report in that regard?
It's a fantastic question. It's a fantastic question. And you know what? I have the liberty of having the GI Bill. Still haven't used it, and I plan on passing it on to my kids. So I'm going to be able to provide my kid with the opportunity to say, you got college for free, even if I'm a poor public servant. Okay? And yes, we need to extend that opportunity to every single person in this country. So is that enough of a yes? Now, what I was trying to point out in my answer is that it can't just be college. If that's the only answer, then we are going to ignore the millions of young people in this country whose destiny is in vocational education. We are going to ignore the millions of people who are in their 40s who need to find a new path.
Who go to college?
Yes, of course. Of course. Of course. And listen, my mother has been a community college professor for 25 years at Borough Manhattan Community College. 25 years. And I believe certainly in free community college for every person in this country. I'm merely trying to point out that if we just look at free college, if that's our only answer, then we are going to let a lot of people behind who deserve a future in this country.
Okay, and the final two questions. Dennis, I'll let you ask yours first, and I'll close, and then I'll jump in. We will allow the congressional candidates a minute each to close, and then we'll jump to our business.
Okay, the reality is to win a primary, and it looks like we're headed that way, you're going to have to be a really good, strong Democrat. We're in a district that is not terribly favorable to Democrats historically, as Cindy pointed out, so half of my question she asked already. But to win this primary, you're going to have to win over the Democrats by being a good Democrat and not by, that's what I'm hearing from both candidates, and I think it's common wisdom, I think, that we believe. You can't go into the conservative way of thinking, even though you're in a conservative district. You have to get the Mid-Island and the South Shore, which turned out in higher numbers than ever before in this last election, when one would have thought that what was happening in Washington would have kept some of those people home and that they wouldn't have turned out so heavily. So you have tremendous uphill battle, is what I'm saying. Once you win the Democratic primary, how do you then reach those folks who witnessed a primary where you had to be a good, solid Democrat, and then their avowed purpose in life, a lot of them, is to vote Republican come hell or high water. Witness what's happening down in Alabama, where Trump just came out and endorsed essentially Judge Moore, saying that we can't have a liberal in there, so might as well vote for this guy because I believe him, because he keeps pronouncing, etc. So the question in reality is, how, given all of that, can you feel that you can go ahead as a candidate and win a primary and then turn around and win the whole district?
You know, I want to commend Michael as well, because both of us are veterans. And it's about time that Democratic Party ran some veterans, I think.
Yeah.
Because,
Like George McGovern.
what's that?
Like George McGovern. You're too young to remember.
So, before we brought up 1972, the point that I'm trying to make here is that I believe veterans are in a very particular position here. And it's not just veterans, it's teachers, and it's nurses, and it's EMS workers, and it's firefighters, and it's cops who can see eye to eye with some of these folks in our district who haven't trusted the Democratic Party in a long time. And bring them back into the fold and still push for a progressive agenda. Still push for infrastructure planning. Still push for retraining. Still push for universal health care coverage. We can do both. So that's how I think we're going to win this.
It's going to take the right candidate, right? And I know that I said that earlier. I believe that people don't, I believe that to an extent, people are going to vote for who they believe in. And we need to give someone, to give this island, this district, someone to believe in. And if we do that, if we come together and we stay organized, and we get behind the person who wins out in June, and we hold that person up, we have a chance to have a champion. Because we all need a champion. Even the Republicans who don't believe that they could accept our champion, they need a champion. And that's how we get it done.
Well said. So, for the final question. So I have two questions. Let's see, it's cheating, right? Privileges.
Are we gonna have a dance off after this?
So my first question is, are you both members of SIDA yet?
I tried to pay my dues several times, and I brought a check tonight to make sure that it got
Bonnie, we take checks, don't we?
Tom Shabanko said, just bring a check.
Thank you. Max Rose, we're gonna sign you up tonight, aren't we? All right, brother. All right, so that was an easy question. So there's so much that's been going on since Trump got elected. All kinds of weird legislation coming out of left and right, up and down field, right? Confusing the masses. And our current congressman has sort of been doing a jig with the president, and I say that in the sense that we've not really been able to get him, to meet with the people, speak up for the people. I've met him twice already, but it's more about meeting your constituents where they're at. So, if you guys become congressmen, or when you become elected congressmen, what format, as per engaging with your constituents, will you adopt? Meaning, how frequent will you be in the community? Can we expect to see you at the table? Give us sort of your first day as a congressman, what your procedures would look like in terms of community relations.
So for those of you who know me know that I show up. I am always present. And that will not change. One of the reasons why I threw my hat in the ring on this is because we went to visit Dan Donovan in his office one day, and we asked him to be a champion for us on 2 issues. And he talked a lot about his great friendship with our president, the president. And he did not answer our questions. And in 20 or 19 minutes, we were out the door. And a week or so later, I got an email that was a cut and paste job.
It's lovely to see you.
And the other day, when I went to the coffee clack, or what have you, in Fort Hamilton, I challenged him to support gun violence research, H.R. 1478, that's currently buried in Congress since March, as we still just about every day, witness more and more shootings. Since October 1st, there's been 521 shootings, mass shootings, in the prior 477 days. And he danced around the question, and he was elusive, as Dan usually is. And that will not happen when I'm your congressman. I will be present. I will be coming to you. You will never have to look for me. And you could look back on the 13 years that I've served this community to know that I will show up for you.
Bobby, I'm not going to let Dan Donovan off that easy. All right? He voted the right way on taxes. He voted the right way on health care. But guess what? Those bills still passed. So he's doing 2 things. One is he's empowering a Republican Party that only cares about the wealthiest among us. The second thing, though, he's doing is he's demonstrating how ineffective he is. Let's remember back to 2009, all right? There were a bunch of conservative Democratic members of Congress who hated the idea of a public option. What they do, they got it yanked out of the bill. If Dan Donovan was a leader, if Dan Donovan could actually get the job done, then he would just stop making symbolic votes and then write an editorial in the Daily News after the stuff is already passed.
Right.
But to your question about what would have you like as a member of Congress, first of all, and I know Michael will too, and I know every other candidate will here, will be constantly available. But that means not just available to the folks who can make it to the nightly community board meeting or the nightly political club meeting. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room. It means coming to people's homes with technology, but it also means having town halls at hours where the person who's a union worker who has to wake up at 5 in the morning can still make it. It makes making yourself constantly available, being tireless. But lastly, we've got to reimagine what the role of a legislator is. It's not just legislation. We've got to start exercising the network power of a member of Congress. We live on an island. Let's bring business and non-for-profit and cultural institutions and religious institutions and investors to the table and start imagining creative ways that we can address the opioid epidemic, that we can address retraining, that we can address some of the issues that you brought up, Shruti. We don't have to wait for legislation and this intransience that we see in Washington, D.C. We can use that network power as a legislator, and it's about time that we see it. And that's what I commit to you that I'll do.
I like the sound of that. So I'm going to thank you very much for answering that question. I love both of the answers. I'm going to give you guys a minute each to sort of close. You know, you've had the floor for a while now, so. And thank you for participating in this very informative meeting.
You've heard a lot from us today. And so I just want to close by saying thank you to each of you. You all are going to bring change to Washington, D.C., whether it's by vote for me or vote for one of my colleagues who are also running. So let's get to work. Because what this administration is doing is horrific. And if we don't check them by flipping the House, then they are going to leave a lasting imprint on this country. And here's what I'll tell you, is we should leave here feeling positive. 6 months ago, this race was not on anyone's map. And it's because of you all that now it's considered a top 30 race. Irrespective of the candidate. They don't care about the candidate. It's considered a top 30 race because of the energy of the community. And you all should know that. So leave here with your heads held high and energized. So we're going to flip this seat and we're going to check this president. We're going to check the Republican Party. So thank you so much again for your time.
So yes, indeed, thank you. And thank you, Max. This was an interesting back and forth and a somewhat unexpected one. And that's all good. I think it's important that we all just jumped in and we start getting to know each other because we have an interesting road ahead. So, I will leave you with this. I believe that I'm the best candidate to get this done because for the last 13 years, I have been working hard for this community. And by hard for this community, that means having helped young people who were homeless set up tents on Lemon Creek Beach, having delivered diapers at 11 o'clock at night to a young person in Park Hill, to have helped young people navigate back from coming out of incarceration, to have helped young people who have OD'd or were in recovery, getting back connected to their education. I have, for the last 13 years, worked through all of the red tape that the bureaucracy creates for us to work through. And I am that regular guy who is not going to give up on a single one of my constituents. So we do this together. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. So as you leave here tonight, remember that we have a commitment to one another to get this done next November. Thank you for your time.